So that the soul appears to be a sort of material thing as compared to the soul born out of that soul. So they're all relative terms. So we believe that souls go through a long process of evolution whereby they reach a spiritual form, as if they're reborn. And then the doomsday for them will begin. Now, as far as the belief in reincarnation is concerned, I believe that the Sikhs particularly have no right to believe in that, because they never received this message from Hazrat Guru Baba Nanak. There is not a shred of evidence from which we can say that Hazrat Guru Baba Nanak spoke of reincarnation on this earth. And he couldn't have, because he was extremely critical of Vedas. As you know your Granth Sahib, you know he was very critical of Vedas. And this is one of the Vedic teachings which was imparted to Sikhism slowly, gradually, without their taking notice of it, because a lot of Sikhs hail from the Hindu stock. So they accepted this, it crept into them unnoticed. And it's not possible anyway, because if this theory of reincarnation is correct, then according to this theory, those who act wrongfully in this world, of human beings, they do not return to this earth in the form of human beings. Their status is lowered to the lower forms of life. They could even be recreated by way of punishment as worms, or insects, or dogs, or lions, or things like that. Now we know that this age is Kal Yuga, sinful age. So here the question should arise that of the danger of extermination of human race. Because when a sinful society dies, it should not be raised again in human form. But what we find is exactly the opposite. People, the scientists particularly, are worried about extinction on some forms of animals. But they are not worried about the extinction of human race. It's the contrary. They say some measures should be adopted, to plan, family planning and do this. Otherwise there will be too many human beings born. So how could a sinful society, according to the philosophy of reincarnation, have multiplication and such rapid multiplication of a sinful people? They should have been relegated to the lower order of life. So this means that this is just an explanation of older generations, which was not accepted by Hazrat Guru Baba Nanak, the founder of Sikhism, and should not be subscribed to by the Sikhs today. Thank you.
Hazur, next questioner is Mr. Francis Smart from Sierra Leone.
You always say Sierra Leone, as if it's a part of Syria.
Sierra Leone.
It is Sierra Leone, not Syria, please.
Thank you.
The question reads, in medicine, fasting is considered to be detrimental to one's health. Fasting is one of the contributing factors in the development of peptic ulcer disease, particularly gastric ulcer. What is the position of predisposed Muslims and patients of gastric ulcer in Islam with respect to fasting during the holy month of Ramadan?
Could anybody help me understand? Because you see this, through this artificial means, the voice is slightly distorted. I can't fully understand sometimes, particularly when the pronunciation is a bit different from the tradition to pronunciation to which we are accustomed. Would you help?
He's saying that about the ulcers, the
Is that right?
And Ramadan, the relationship, it's a medical, I think.
Ulcers?
Yeah.
Something in the stomach.
Yes, that's right.
Ulcer, gastric ulcer.
Gastric.
But gastric
that's
ulcer
what I
is just
And then
one.
Ramadan, how it-
One of the-
Nobody is permitted to keep fast by the Holy Quran if he is ill. That is the answer.
No,
The Holy Quran does not permit an ill person to keep fasts.
excuse me. That's not really the main question there because that I know already. But I'm talking about predisposed Muslims because the predisposed Muslims are not diagnosed. So they are never known in the population, but they keep
I
fast
don't
for a month.
understand this terminology of predisposed Muslims.
predisposed
Has anybody understood?
predisposed to
To ulcer, yes.
Yes, the people who medically are predisposed to ulcer.
I am
To
sorry,
gastric
prone to
ulcer.
get ulcers.
Exactly so.
Is that what you mean? Yes.
Yes. Sorry, please, for
You
misunderstanding.
see, everyone is prone to have something. And the various people belonging to different races and countries and climates have their predisposition, that inclination to fall ill, and not in general terms, but particularly fall in one direction. For instance, in the Gambia, the pernicious anemia is very common because the resistance to malaria, which was essential for their survival, can only be achieved at the cost of this weakness. If you are predisposed to pernicious anemia, then you cannot suffer from malaria. So they are saved from one more dangerous option to a less dangerous option, and they live normal life with that pernicious anemia. But with malaria, the severe malaria which you find there, they cannot survive long. So it is God's ways. When somebody is so-called predisposed to certain things, it is not always bad. It is sometimes a preventive measure against some other dispensations or inclinations. For instance, the second head of the Ahmadiyya community, Hadhrat Hakim Nuruddin, was a great physician of Indian fame. He was a gifted physician. Once a case of tuberculosis came to him, which had been declared incurable by the best physicians of India at that time. He artificially created an ulcer on his shin. And from then on, the ulcer drew all the attention of his economy. And as if the bacillus of tuberculosis remained dormant from then on. So sometimes a bad thing, apparently bad thing, is instrumental in your being saved from the worst thing which could have happened to you. Now, why this should happen at all? Because it is human beings whose whose lack of proper conduct in their diet, in their habits of life, etc., invites many diseases. So there is a counter system running along with it to save them from the direct consequences of their own misconduct or misbehavior or negligence, and we see only the suffering part and we don't know what it has saved you from. So if this is the philosophy you wanted to understand, then it is only a short answer to that. But if I misunderstood your question, you have to repeat it more clearly, please.
Yeah, I really wanted to admit that fasting in the month of Ramadan affects the health.
Affects the health?
Yes.
Adversely?
Yes,
or
in
good,
as much
in a
as...
good way?
In a bad way, in as much as...
All right. To counter you, I quote the example of a research carried out by Israeli scientists recently. No, they are no friends of Muslims in Islam, are they?
No.